Welcome everybody, this is Alan with Daily Armor of God. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well. This is reading the Old Testament in 88 days. We're on day 44. And today is the midway point of this reading plan. We just have 44 days left to go. And after today that is. And we'll be starting 2 Chronicles today. And we'll be reading chapters 1 through 9. So let's get started in 2 Chronicles chapter 1. And Solomon the son of David was strengthened in his kingdom, and Yahweh his Elohim was with him and magnified him exceedingly. Then Solomon spake unto all Israel, to the captains of thousands and hundreds, and the judges, and to every governor in all Israel, the chief of the fathers. So Solomon and all the congregation with him went to the high place that was at Gibeon, for there was the tabernacle of the congregation of Elohim, which Moses the servant of Yahweh had made in the wilderness. But the ark of Elohim had David brought up from Kirjath-jearim, in the place which David had prepared for it, for he had pitched a tent for it at Jerusalem. Moreover, the brassen altar that Bazaleel the son of Uri, the son of Hur, he put before the tabernacle of Yahweh, and Solomon and the congregation sought unto it. Solomon went up thither to the brassen altar before Yahweh, which was at the tabernacle of the congregation, and offered 1,000 burnt offerings upon it. And that night did Elohim appear unto Solomon, and said unto him, Ask what I shall give thee. Solomon said unto Elohim, Thou hast showed great mercy unto David my father, and hast made me to reign in his stead. Now, O Yahweh Elohim, let thy promise unto David my father be established, for thou hast made me king over a people like the dust of the earth in multitude. Give me now wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come in before this people. For who can judge this thy people that is so great? And Elohim said to Solomon, Because this was in thine heart, and thou hast not asked riches, wealth, or honor, nor the life of thine enemies, neither yet hast asked long life, but hast asked wisdom and knowledge for thyself, that thou mayest judge my people, over whom I have made thee king. Wisdom and knowledge is granted unto thee, and I will give thee riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings have had that have ever been before thee, neither shall there any thee after thee have the like. Then Solomon came from his journey to the high place that was at Gibeon to Jerusalem from before the tabernacle of the congregation, and reigned over Israel. And Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, which he placed in the chariot cities, and with the king at Jerusalem. And the king made silver and gold at Jerusalem, as plenteous as stones, and cedar trees made he, as the sycamore trees that are in the vale, for abundance. And Solomon had horses bought out of Egypt, and linen yarn, and the king's merchants received the linen yarn at a price. And they fetched up and brought forth out of Egypt a chariot for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150 shekels of silver. 150. Wow, that's cheaper than the chariot. And so brought they out horses for all the kings of the Hittites, and for the kings of Syria by their means. Second Chronicles 2. And Solomon determined to build an house for the name of Yahweh, and a house for his kingdom. Solomon told out 70,000 men to bear burdens, and 80,000 to hew in mountain, and 3,600 to oversee them. And Solomon sent to Hiram the king of Tyre, saying, As thou didst deal with David my father, and didst send him cedars to build him a house to dwell therein, even so deal with me. Behold, I build a house to the name of Yahweh my Elohim, to dedicate it to him, and to burn before him sweet incense, and for the continual showbread, and for the burnt offerings morning and evening, and on the Sabbaths, and on the new moons, and on the solemn feast of Yahweh our Elohim. This is an ordinance forever to Israel. And the house which I built is great, for great is our Elohim above all gods. But who is able to build him a house, seeing the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain him? Who am I then, that I should build him a house, save only to burn sacrifice before him? Send me thou therefore a man cunning to work in gold, and in silver, and in brass, and in iron, and in purple, and crimson, and blue, and that can skill to grave with cunning men that are with me in Judah and in Jerusalem, whom David my father did provide. Send me also cedar trees, fir trees, algum trees out of Lebanon, for I know that thy servants can skill to cut timber in Lebanon. And behold, my servants shall be with thy servants. Even to prepare me timber in abundance, for the house which I am about to build shall be wonderful great. Behold, I will give to thy servants the hewers that cut timber 20,000 measures of beaten wheat, 20,000 measures of barley, and 20,000 baths of wine, and 20,000 baths of oil. And Hiram the king of Tyre answered in writing, which he sent to Solomon, because Yahweh hath loved his people, he hath made thee king over them. Hiram said, moreover, Blessed be Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, that made heaven and earth, who hath given to David the king a wise son, endued with prudence and understanding, that might build a house for Yahweh, and a house for his kingdom. And now I have sent a cunning man endued with understanding of Hiram my father's, the son of a woman of the daughters of Dan, and his father was a man of Tyre, skillful to work in gold, and in silver, and brass, and iron, in stone, and in timber, in purple, and blue, and in fine linen, and in crimson, also to grave any manner of graving, and to find out every device which shall be put to him with thy cunning men, and with the cunning men of my lord David thy father. And therefore the wheat, and the barley, and the oil, and the wine, which my lord hath spoken of, let him send unto his servants, and we will cut wood out of Lebanon, as much as thou shalt need, and we will bring it to thee in floats by sea to Joppa, and shalt carry it up to Jerusalem. And Solomon numbered all the strangers that were in the land of Israel after the numbering wherewith David his father had numbered them, and they were found 150,000 and 3,600. And he set 70,000 of them to be bearers of burdens, and 80,000 to be hewers in the mountain, and 3,600 overseers to set the peoples at work. 2 Chronicles 3. Then Solomon began to build the house of Yahweh at Jerusalem in Mount Moriah, where Yahweh appeared unto David his father in the place that David had prepared in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And he began to build in the 2nd day of the 2nd month, in the 4th year of his reign. And these are the things wherein Solomon was instructed for the building of the house of Elohim. The length by cubits after the first measure was 80 cubits, and the breadth of 20 cubits. And the porch that was in the front of the house, and the length of it was according to the breadth of the house, 20 cubits, and the height was 120, and he overlaid it with pure gold. And the greater house he sided with fir tree, which he overlaid with fine gold, and set thereon palm trees and chains. And he garnished the house with precious stones for beauty, and the gold was gold of Paravaim. He overlaid also the house, the beams, the pots, the walls thereof, and the doors thereof, with gold engraved cherubims on the walls. And he made the most holy house, the length whereof was according to the breadth of the house, 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof 20 cubits. And he overlaid with fine gold, amounting to 600 talents. And the weight of the nails was 50 shekels of gold. And he overlaid the upper chambers with gold. And in the most holy house he made 2 cherubims of image work, and overlaid them with gold. The wings of the cherubims were 20 cubits long. One wing of the one cherub was 5 cubits, reaching to the wall of the house, and the other wing was likewise 5 cubits, reaching to the wing of the other cherub. And one wing of the other cherub was 5 cubits, reaching to the wall of the house, and the other wing was 5 cubits, joining to the wing of the other cherub. The wings of these cherubim spread themselves forth 20 cubits, and they stood on their feet, and their faces inward. And he made the veil of blue and purple and crimson and fine linen, and wrought cherubims thereon. Also he made before the house 2 pillars of 30 and 5 cubits high, and the chapiter that was on the top of each of them was 5 cubits. And he made chains as in the oracle, and put them on the heads of the pillars, and made 100 pomegranates, and put them on the chains. And he reared up the pillars before the temple, one on the right hand, on the other on the left, and he called the name of that on the right hand Jachin, and the name of that on the left Boaz. Chronicles 4. Moreover, he made an altar of brass, 20 cubits the length thereof, and 20 cubits the breadth thereof, and 10 cubits the height thereof. And he made a molten sea of 10 cubits from brim to brim, round in compass, and 5 cubits the height thereof, and a line of 30 cubits did compass it round about. And under it was the similitude of oxen, which did compass it round about, 10 in a cubit, compassing the sea round about. 2 rows of oxen were cast. when it was cast. It stood upon 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, 3 looking toward the west, 3 looking toward the south, and 3 looking toward the east, and the sea was set above them, and all their hinder parts were inward. And the thickness of it was a handbreadth, and the brim of it was like the work of a brim of a cup with flowers of lilies, and it received and held 3,000 baths. He made also 10 lavers, and put 5 on the right hand and 5 on the left, to wash in them such things as they offered for the burnt offering. They washed in them, but the sea was for the priests to wash it in. He made 10 candlesticks of gold according to their form, and set them in the temple, 5 on the right hand and 5 on the left. He made also 10 tables, and placed them in the temple, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left. And he made 100 basins of gold. Furthermore, he made the court of the priests, and the great court, and doors for the court, and overlaid the doors of them with brass. He set the sea on the right side of the east end, over against the south, and Hiram made the pots and the shovels and the basins, and Hiram finished the work that he was to make for King Solomon for the house of Elohim, to which the 2 pillars and the pommels and the chapiters which were on the top of the 2 pillars, and the 2 wreaths to cover the 2 pommels and the chapiters which were on the top of the pillars. And 400 pomegranates on the 2 wreaths, 2 rows of pomegranates on each wreath, to cover the 2 pomegranates of the chapiters which were upon the pillars. He made also bases, and lavers made he upon the bases, 1 seat and 12 oxen under it. The pots also, and the shovels, and the flesh hooks, and all their instruments, did Hiram his father make to King Solomon for the house of Yahweh of bright brass. In the plain of Jordan did the king cast them in the clay ground between Succoth and Zeradath. Thus Solomon made all these vessels in great abundance, for the weight of the brass could not be found. Wow. That's crazy. And Solomon made all the vessels that were for the house of Elohim. The golden altar also, and the tables whereon the showbread was set. Moreover, the candlesticks with their lamps, that they should burn after the manner before the oracle of pure gold. And the flowers and the lamps and the tongs he made of gold, and that perfect gold. And the snuffers and the basins and the spoons and the censers of pure gold, and the entry of the house and the inner doors thereof for the most holy place, and the doors of the house of the temple were of gold. Man, this would be so amazing to see. 2 Chronicles 5. Thus all the work that Solomon made for the house of Yahweh was finished, and Solomon brought all the things that David his father had dedicated, and the silver and the gold and the instruments put he among the treasures of the house of Elohim. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, and all the heads of the tribes and chief of the fathers of the children of Israel, unto Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of Yahweh out of the city of David, which is Zion. Wherefore all the men of Israel assembled themselves unto the king in the feast which was in the 7th month. And all the elders of Israel came, and all the Levites took up the ark. And they brought up the ark, the tabernacle of the congregation, and all the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle. These the priests and Levites bring up. Also King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him before the ark sacrificed sheep and oxen, which they could not be told nor numbered for multitude. And the priests brought in the ark of the covenant of Yahweh unto his place, to the oracle of the house, into the most holy place, even unto the wings of the cherubims. For the cherubims spread forth their wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubims covered the ark with the staves thereof above. And they drew out the staves of the ark, that the ends of the staves were seen from the ark before the oracle, but they were not seen without, and there is unto this day. There was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables which Moses put therein at Horeb, when Yahweh made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt. And it came to pass, when the priests were coming out of the holy place, for all the priests that were present were sanctified, and did not then wait by course. Also the Levites, which were the singers of all them of Asaph, and Heman, and Jeduthun, with their sons and their brethren, being arrayed in white linen, having cymbals and psalteries and harps, stood at the east end of the altar, with them 120 priests sounding with trumpets. And it came to pass, as the trumpeters and singers were as one, to make one sound to be heard in praising and thanking Yahweh. And when they lifted up their voice with the trumpets and cymbals and instruments of music, and praised Yahweh, saying, For he is good, for his mercy endureth forever, that then the house was filled with a cloud, even the house of Elohim. so that the priests could not stand to minister by reason of the cloud, for the glory of Yahweh had filled the house of Elohim. 2 Chronicles 6. Then said Solomon, Yahweh hath said that he would dwell in the thick darkness, but I have built a house of habitation for thee, and place for thy dwelling forever. And the king turned his face and blessed the whole congregation of Israel, and all the congregation of Israel stood. And he said, Blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Israel, who hath with his hands fulfilled that which he spake with his mouth to my father David, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people out of the land of Egypt, I chose no city among all the tribes of Israel to build a house in, that my name might be there, neither choose I any man to be ruler over my people Israel. But I have chosen Jerusalem, that my name might be there, and have chosen David to be over my people Israel. Now it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of Yahweh Elohim of Israel. But Yahweh said to David my father, Forasmuch as it was in thine heart to build a house for my name, thou didst well, in that it was in thine heart. Notwithstanding thou shalt not build the house, but thy son which shall come forth out of thy loins, he shall build the house for my name. Yahweh therefore hath performed his word, for he hath spoken. For I am risen up in the room of David my father, and I am set on the throne of Israel, as Yahweh promised, and have built the house for the name of Yahweh Elohim of Israel. And in it I have put the ark wherein is the covenant of Yahweh that he made with the children of Israel. And he stood before the altar of Yahweh in the presence of all the congregation of Israel, and spread forth his hands. For Solomon had made a brazen scaffold of 5 cubits long, 5 cubits broad, and 3 cubits high, and set it in the midst of the court, and upon it he stood and kneeled down upon his knees before all the congregation of Israel, and spread forth his hand toward heaven, and said, O Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, there is no Elohim like thee in heaven, nor in the earth, which keepest covenant, and showest mercy unto thy servants, that thou walk before thee with all their hearts. Thou which hast kept with thy servant David my father that which thou hast promised him, and spakest with thy mouth, and hast fulfilled it with thine hand, as it is this day. Now therefore, O Yahweh Elohim of Israel, keep with thy servant David my father that which thou hast promised him, saying, There shall not fail thee a man in my sight to sit upon the throne of Israel, yet so that thy children take heed to their way to walk in my law, as thou hast walked before me. Now then, O Yahweh Elohim of Israel, let thy word be verified, which thou hast spoken unto thy servant David. But will Elohim in very deed dwell with men on the earth? Behold, heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain thee, how much less the house which I have built. Have respect therefore to the prayer of the servant, and to his supplication, O Yahweh my Elohim, to hearken unto the cry and to the prayer which the servant prayeth before thee, that thine eyes may be open upon this house day and night, upon the place whereof thou hast said that thou wouldest put thy name there, to hearken to the prayer which thy servant prayeth toward this place. Hearken therefore unto the supplications of thy servant and of thy people Israel, which they shall make toward this place. Hear thou from thy dwelling place, even from heaven, and when thou hearest, forgive. If a man sin against his neighbor, and an oath be laid upon him to make him swear, and the oath come before thine altar in this house, then hear thou from heaven, and do and judge thy servants, and by requiting the wicked, by recompensing his way upon his own head, and by justifying the righteous, by giving him according to his righteousness. And if thy people Israel be put to the worst before the enemy, because they have sinned against thee, and shall return and confess thy name, and pray and make supplication before thee in this house, then hear thou from the heavens, and forgive the sin of thy people Israel, and bring them again into the land which thou gavest to them and to their fathers. When the heaven is shut up and there is no rain, because they have sinned against thee, yet if they pray toward this place, and confess that thy name, and do turn from their sin when thou doest afflict them, then hear thou from heaven, and forgive the sin of thy servants and of thy people Israel, when thou hast taught them the good way wherein they should walk, and send rain upon the land, which thou hast given to thy people for an inheritance. If there be any dearth in the land, if there be any pestilence, if there be blasting or mildew or locusts or caterpillars, if there be enemies, besiege them in the cities of their land, whatsoever sore or whatsoever sickness there be, then what prayer or what supplication soever shall be made of any man or of all thy people Israel, when everyone shall know his own sore and his own grief, and shall spread forth his hands in his house. Then hear thou from heaven thy dwelling place, and forgive and render unto every man according unto all his ways, whose heart thou knowest, for thou only knowest the hearts of the children of men. That they may fear to walk in thy ways so long as they live in the land which thou gavest unto our fathers. Moreover, concerning the stranger which is not of thy people Israel, but is come from a far country for thy great name's sake, and thy mighty hand and thy stretched out arm, if they come and pray in this house. And hear thou from the heavens, even from thy dwelling place, and do according to all that the stranger calleth to thee, for that all the people of the earth may know thy name and fear thee, as doth thy people Israel, and may know that this house which I have built is called by thy name. If thy people go out to war against their enemies by the way that thou shalt send to them, and they pray unto thee toward the city which thou hast chosen, and the house which I have built for thy name, then hear thou from heaven their prayer and their supplications, maintain their cause. They sin against thee, for there is no man which sinneth not, and thou be angry with them, and deliver them over before their enemies, and they carry them away captives into a land far off or near. Yet if they bethink themselves in the land whither they are carried captive, and turn and pray unto thee in the land of their captivity, saying, We have sinned, we have done amiss, we have dealt wickedly. If they return to thee with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their captivity, whither they have carried them captives, and pray toward their land which thou gavest unto their fathers, and toward the city which thou hast chosen, and toward the house which I have built for thy name, then hear thou from the heavens, even from thy dwelling place, their prayer and their supplications, and maintain their cause, and forgive thy people which have sinned against thee. Now, my Elohim, let, I beseech thee, thine eyes be open, let thine ears be attentive unto the prayer that is made in this place. Now therefore arise, Yahweh Elohim, into thy resting place, thou in the ark of thy strength. Let thy priests, O Yahweh Elohim, be clothed with salvation, and let thy saints rejoice in goodness. O Yahweh Elohim, turn not away from the face of thine anointed. Remember the mercies of David thy servant. 2 Chronicles 7. Now when Solomon had made an end of praying, the fire came down from heaven, and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of Yahweh filled the house. And the priests could not enter into the house of Yahweh, because the glory of Yahweh filled Yahweh's house. And when all the children of Israel saw how the fire came down, and the glory of Yahweh upon the house, they bowed themselves with their faces to the ground upon the pavement, and worshipped and praised Yahweh, saying, For he is good, and his mercy endureth forever. Then the king of all the people offered sacrifices before Yahweh. And King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the people dedicated the house of Elohim. And the priests waited on their offices, the Levites also with their instruments of music of Yahweh, which David the king had made to praise Yahweh, because his mercy endureth forever. When David praised by their ministry, and the priests sounded trumpets before them, and all the Israel stood. Moreover, Solomon had hollowed the middle of the court that was before the house of Yahweh, for there he offered burnt offerings and the fat of the peace offerings, because the brazen altar which Solomon had made was not able to receive the burnt offerings and the meat offerings and the fat. Also at the same time Solomon kept the feast 7 days, and all Israel with him, a very great congregation, from the entering in of Hamath unto the river of Egypt. And the 8th day they made a solemn assembly, for they kept the dedication of the altar 7 days, and the feast 7 days. And on the 23rd day of the 7th month he sent the people away to their tents, glad and merry in the heart, for the goodness that Yahweh had showed unto David, and to Solomon, and to Israel his people. Thus Solomon finished the house of Yahweh and the king's house, and all that came into Solomon's heart to make in the house of Yahweh, and in his own house he prosperously effected. And Yahweh appeared to Solomon by night, and said to him, I have heard thy prayer, and have chosen this place to myself for an house of sacrifice. If I shut up heaven that there is no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people. My people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways. Then I will hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. Now mine eyes shall be open, and mine ears shall attend unto the prayer that is made in this place. Now I have chosen and sacrificed this house, that my name may be there forever, and mine eyes and mine heart shall be there perpetually. And as for thee, if thou wilt walk before me, all as David thy father walked, and do all according to all that I have commanded thee, and shalt observe my statutes and my judgments, then I will establish the throne of thy kingdom according as I have covenanted with David thy father, saying, There shall not fail thee a man to be ruler in Israel. But if you turn away and forsake my statutes and my commandments, which I have set before you, and shall go and serve other gods and worship them, then will I pluck them up by the roots out of my land which I have given them, and this house which I have sanctified for my name I will cast out of my sight, and will make it to be a proverb and a byword among the nations. And this house which is high shall be an astonishment to everyone that passeth by, so that he say, Why hath Yahweh done thus unto the land and unto this house? And shall be answered, Because they forsook Yahweh Elohim of their fathers, which brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold on the other gods, and worshipped them, and served them. Therefore hath he brought all this evil upon them. 2 Chronicles 8. And it came to pass at the end of the 20 years, wherein Solomon had built the house of Yahweh, and his own house, that the cities which Haran had restored to Solomon, Solomon built them, and caused the children of Israel to dwell there. And Solomon went to Hamath Zobah, and prevailed against it. And he built Tadmor in the wilderness, and all the store cities which he built in Hamath. And he also built Beth-horon, the upper cities, and Beth-horon, the nether fenced cities, with walls, gates, and bars, and Baalath, and all the store cities that Solomon had, and all the chariot cities, and to the cities of the horsemen, and all that the Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, and in Lebanon, and throughout all the land of his dominion. As for all the people that were left of the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which were not of Israel, but of their children who were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel consumed not, them did Solomon make to pay tribute until this day. But the children of Israel did Solomon make no servants for his work, but they were men of war, and chief of his captains, and the captains of his chariots and horsemen. And these were the chief of King Solomon's officers, even 250 that bare rule over the people. And Solomon brought up the daughter of Pharaoh out of the city of David unto the house that he had built for her. And he said, My wife shall not dwell in the house of David, King David of Israel, because the places are holy whereunto the ark of Yahweh hath come. Then Solomon offered burnt offerings unto Yahweh on the altar of Yahweh, which he had built for the porch, even after a certain rate every day, offering according to the commandment of Moses on the Sabbaths, and on the new moons, and on the solemn feasts, 3 times in the year, even the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles. And he appointed according to the order of David his father the courses of the priests to their service, and the Levites to their charges, to praise and minister before the priests, as the duty of every day required, the porters also by their courses at every gate, for so had David the man of Elohim commanded. And they departed not from the commandment of the king unto the priests and Levites concerning any matter, or concerning the treasures. Now all the work of Solomon was prepared unto the day of the foundation of the house of Yahweh, until it was finished. The house of Yahweh was perfected. Then went Solomon to Ezon-geber, and to Eloth, at the seaside in the land of Edom. Ram sent him by the hands of his servants, ships and servants that had knowledge of the sea, and they went with the servants of Solomon at Ophir, and took thence 450 talents of gold, and brought them to King Solomon. In 2 Chronicles 9. And when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon, she came to prove Solomon with hard questions at Jerusalem, with a very great company, and camels that bare spices, and gold in abundance, and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, She communed with him of all that was in her heart, and Solomon told her all her questions, and there was nothing hid from Solomon which he told her not. And when the queen of Sheba had seen the wisdom of Solomon in the house that he had built, and the meat of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel, his cupbearers also and their apparel, and his ascent by which he went up into the house of Yahweh, there was no more spirit in her. And she said to the king, It was a true report which I heard in mine own land of thine acts and of thy wisdom. Howbeit I believed not their words until I came and mine eyes had seen it. And behold, the one half of the greatness of thy wisdom was told for me, for thou exceedest the fame that I heard. Happy are thy men, and happy are these thy servants, which stand continually before thee, and to hear thy wisdom. Blessed be Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, which delighted in thee, to set thee on his throne, to be king for Yahweh thy Elohim. Because thy Elohim loved Israel, to establish them forever, therefore made he thee king over them, to do judgment and justice. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, and of spices great abundance, and precious stones. Neither was there any such spice as the queen of Sheba gave King Solomon. The servants also of Huram and the servants of Solomon, which brought gold from Ophir, brought algum trees and precious stones, and the king made of the algum trees terraces in the house of Yahweh, and to the king's palace and harps and psalteries for singers, and there was none such seen before in the land of Judah. And King Solomon gave to the queen of Sheba all her desire whatsoever she asked, beside that which she had brought unto the king. So she turned and went her way to her own land, she and her servants. Now the weight of the gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold, beside that which chapmen and merchants brought, and all the king of Arabia and the governors of the country brought gold and silver to Solomon. And King Solomon made 200 targets of beaten gold. 600 shekels of beaten gold went to one target, and 300 shekels made he of beaten gold. 300 shekels of gold went to one shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory, and overlaid it with pure gold. And there were 6 steps to the throne, with a footstool of gold, which were fastened to the throne, and its stays on each side of the sitting place, and 2 lions standing by the stays. The 12 lions stood there on the one side, and on the other side upon the 6 steps. There was not like made in any kingdom. And that would be so cool to see. And all the drinking vessels of King Solomon were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. It was not anything accounted of in the days of Solomon. For the king's ships went to Tarshish with the servants of Huram. Every 3 years once came the ships of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory, and apes and peacocks. And King Solomon passed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom, and all the kings of the earth sought the presence of Solomon, to hear his words that Elohim had put in his heart. And they brought every man his present, vessels of silver and vessels of gold, and raiment, harness, and spices, horses, and mules at rate year by year. And Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, and 12,000 horsemen, whom he bestowed in the chariot cities, and with the king at Jerusalem. And he reigned over all the kings, from the river even unto the land of the Philistines, and to the border of Egypt. And the king made silver in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar trees made he as sycamore trees that are in the low plains in abundance. And they brought unto Solomon horses out of Egypt and out of all lands. And now the rest of the acts of Solomon, first and last, are they not written in the book of Nathan the prophet, and in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Edo the seer against Jeroboam the son of Nebat? And Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel 40 years. And Solomon slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son reigned in his stead. Wow. I think it's interesting that Solomon and King Solomon and King David both reigned exactly 40 years. It's just interesting. What's also interesting is during Solomon's reign, it was like the most prosperous ever on the whole face of the earth. And there's never been a time that's been more prosperous than during his time. It's crazy to think about how wealthy, and he also didn't ever have to see battle or war. I think that's cool. And this is where it goes downhill. Rehoboam. Yep, that's where it goes downhill, unfortunately. So we already know what's coming, the eventual exile of everybody to Babylon. We'll pick this up tomorrow. Thanks for watching, guys, and remember, TTFN, ta-ta for now. Take care, God bless, and put God first in everything you do. Have faith in Him, have trust in Him, and wait upon Him, and you'll never be sorry. We'll see you tomorrow, God willingly, with more 2 Chronicles. Thanks again. See you later.